tonight. I know it's been an exciting afternoon with the total eclipse a couple of hours ago, and we have the Yukon Championship game a couple hours from now. So appreciate you taking time to join us for an update on our center infrastructure plan. As folks know, we started this work back in 2022, and we had our first public workshop right here in the auditorium, and we welcomed residents and businesses to join us to help us to begin to develop a vision of what we think the center should be and look like, not just today or tomorrow, but 25 years from now, 50 years ago. And I think we all agree what we have here in the center is very unique and very special. You know, I've heard many people say it's the best shopping, dining, working experience in 60, 70 miles. And I think we all would agree that it's one of those things, one of the many things that makes West Hartford a great place to live and work. So why change anything if everything is that great? And I think for most folks, when you're traveling through the center, you come in, you have dinner, maybe do a little shopping here and there. You see the vibrancy, you see the people, you feel the energy. And for those of us who live really close to the center or work in the center, I think you do start to see that the infrastructure is it's tiring. It's getting older. We have the sidewalks shifting, pavers shifting. What once used to be beautiful trees are starting to show their age. They're decaying. Some are dying, and we're having to remove them. So our goal all along has been to take something that is great and really help make it better. And that's what we're striving to do. So we've had, up to date, we've had 4 public meetings. This is our 5th. At our last, or second to last public meeting, we had a center business meeting back in November, and we were very close to having what we felt was a good option in terms of a change for the center, and received some feedback from our businesses that they thought, and they were right actually, that some of the changes that we were looking at would have been very tough on them during the construction season, and some felt maybe they wouldn't be able to survive a construction season that would potentially take them out of commission for a period of time. So there's also concern about on-street parking and the loss of that on-street parking having a direct impact on their finances as well. So we took that feedback, we went back to the drawing board with our consultants at Stantec. We came up with what we feel is a good option that we're going to present to you tonight. It's a hybrid plan. A hybrid, takes us not quite where we were back in the fall, but not where we are today, and think it's a very good compromise. So we would definitely like to get your feedback this evening. At the end of our presentation, we have 4 tables in the back, and we will do breakout sessions. So we'll all be back there to answer any questions that you may have in small groups or individually. So at this point, what I'd like to do is just introduce some of our members of our staff who are here that will help us with that question and answer. We have John Phillips, our Director of Public Works. We have Brooke Nelson, who leads our parking operation. We have Greg Summer, our Town Engineer. Of course, we have Dwayne Martin, our Director of Community Development. And then we have our consultants, Liza Cohen and Travis from Stantec, who will take over for me here shortly. So I will turn things over to Dwayne Martin, and Dwayne will kick it off a little bit further, and then we'll turn it over to Liza. So thank you very much for being here again.
Thank you, Rick. Good evening, everyone. Dwayne Martin, Director of Community Development for the town. So I'm going to quickly run through our agenda for today. One of the goals for the meeting tonight is to get everybody home safely and in time for the Yukon basketball game. So quickly, the agenda, we're going to touch base on the center master plan, give people an update or a better understanding if they're not familiar. A summary of past outreach. Rick mentioned this is the 5th meeting, so we want to quickly step through some of the previous meetings and outreach process that we've conducted for this project. Of course, give a direction on the street design and some comparisons, give you an understanding of where we are heading with this project. As a component of that, we'll discuss some of the streetscape amenities that are included in the design. An issue that we were hearing quite a bit about, especially from the merchants in the center, is how the construction will unfold. We touched on this a little bit with our last meeting, and we want to give an update on the potential construction phasing and project costs. So you'll see that in a little bit. Again, the master plan updates, and then as Rick mentioned at the end, we'll have the table discussion. So there's plenty of opportunity to ask questions and get answers about where we are headed with this. And with that, I'll turn it over to Liza Cohen from Stantec. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So when we first started looking at the center, we're looking at the center as a whole and trying to develop an infrastructure master plan. And this is part of the reason why. The conditions today are somewhat deteriorating. As you can see in some of these images, you have some patching, sidewalks that are getting a bit torn up, sidewalks that are obstructed, some paving needs. So many lighting and electrical components are at the end of their useful life. So that was kind of the purpose behind this project, and the goal is always to develop a comprehensive vision for the whole center. At a glance in particular, both LaSalle and Farmington have beautiful tree canopies, but if you look a little bit closer, you can see some signs of tree stress and tree decline. So for example, the tree on the right-hand side here, you can see at the very top, things are looking a bit twiggier than they probably should, and some of the roots are in decline because there's just not enough soil volume out there today. Part of our analysis also included looking at all different kinds of mobility systems. So how do people walk, bike, drive through the area? And one of the important components of that is the parking system. So we counted over 5,000 spaces in the center as a whole, but we understand what this parking utilization map is showing is it's basically a heat map where you can see several spaces or areas are oversubscribed, so you might drive up and not be able to find a space, but in reality there's a space right around the corner. So we want to think about why that is and how we might be able to direct people to those open spaces so we can get more people into the center. We also heard a lot of concerns and were able to document some concerns regarding safety in the center. So things like speeding, excessive speeds in the center, backing out of angled parking spaces. We know that angled parking, the design inherently tends to cause more crashes than parallel parking, but also some long crossing distances, which means, you can see these little kids trying to get across several travel lanes, and it just means that you're more exposed for longer. So these are some of the things that we look to rectify with the updated design. And our analysis wasn't just, talking with folks, we also took a look at the data. So these maps are some examples. This heat map on the top left is a map of crash locations. So where things look hotter, that's where there are more crashes. It happens to correlate fairly well with the map on the right that shows crossing distances. So where there are longer crossing distances, there tend to be more crashes. And we also looked at things like the bicycle network, where there are planters and trees and that sort of thing, and the opposite, where there are not, where there's some gaps in those systems. So as important as data and analysis, is of course hearing from all of you. So how many of you attended a meeting or participated online or looked at any of these materials before? Okay, so most folks in the room, that's great. So I will walk through this relatively quickly, but it's been a long process, so it's worth reminding us where we came from. So we had, we're on public meeting number 5. When we were here in the fall of 2022, we were kind of asking, what would you like to see on these streets that comprise the center, and in particular, what are your thoughts on LaSalle and Farmington? We heard some contradicting things, right? Particularly, LaSalle Road is a really good example. Some folks said close it completely. Others said keep it one way, keep the parking the way it is. At the time it was one way, and everything in between. So there's a lot of different opinions in town. That's no surprise to anyone here, I'm sure. When we came back for round 2, which was in the winter of 2023, at that time we heard general support for the concept that we had for Farmington, less so on LaSalle. There were still a lot of folks who would like to see a reduction in parking, integration of more sidewalk or bicycle facilities there, or even still considering a full closure. For round 3, we came back with another design that we thought targeted some of these issues that we'd identified and responded to community concerns. As Rick mentioned, we met with several business stakeholders, and that's where some of these concerns started to bubble to the top regarding loss of on-street parking, how the construction would be phased, issues related to loading zones, so a lot of things that help make these businesses tick. And so we came back later on, a few months later, with a few design options. So this stuff will be new to some of you. We talked with people, had some roundtable meetings, and also did, much like we had with round 1, an online survey where we asked folks to pick between multiple options that could fit on LaSalle Road and Farmington Avenue. So what we heard from people who attended those meetings is shown on the screen here, but in general, there were some questions about the circulation that we were proposing for the Farmington lot, as well as, again, this desire to hang on to as much on-street parking as possible despite the parking availability elsewhere. Continued concerns, this keeps coming up, over vehicle speeds throughout the center, and other potential issues with bike lanes and conflicts with people walking, people driving in the center. So we asked, in general, in addition to talking with people, we did this survey and we said, hey, what would you think is most important to prioritize in these concept designs? And you can see the results on the screen here. So in blue, in yellow, and in purple are outdoor dining, pedestrian amenities, and trees and landscaping. And so those are all kind of sidewalk type amenities. So, we were thinking, okay, how can we expand the space to accommodate these types of things? And you start to see bicycle infrastructure drop off. On-street parking, of course, is also up there in the pink bar there. We also asked, between the concept options that we had at that time, what folks would prefer to see. So these are a little bit challenging to read, but these are street cross sections. So if you're standing in the middle of the street, what's on the street? You can see the gray area is right-of-way for driving cars, the blue area for parking cars, the yellow areas are landscaping, purple for outdoor dining, and orange for a clear walkway. So our different options essentially boiled down to, this is for Farmington. Option A had parallel parking, space for a bicycle facility, as well as space for some other things on the street. Option B was essentially status quo, angled parking, and then option C was a mix of both. Option D had in-street bike lanes. And so when we asked folks to vote on this, and you can look at these results in more detail online, the vote was pretty much split between A and B, so parallel parking or keeping the angled parking and all the amenities that can fit once you make that decision. But what's interesting is the second choice on the bottom right there. So when we said, okay, if you can't have your first choice, what would you pick? And there, option C rose to the top, which is kind of this hybrid option. Similarly, some similar looking cross sections for LaSalle Road. So parallel parking, option A, angled parking, option B, and then this kind of hybrid angled parking in some spaces parallel and others for option C. And again, the poll results came back split down the middle pretty close, with option A being the top choice, parallel parking. But when we asked, okay, what would you like to see as a second option, that option C bubbled to the top. So with that, I'll turn it over to Travis, who will talk about how we took the design.
Travis Ewan from Stantec. I'm the project manager and landscape architect. So we're going to take a look first at LaSalle Road and see what the design direction is there. For the most part, if you look at it, it's very similar to what is out there today. We have angled parking, maintaining mostly angled parking, with some select areas of parallel parking to allow for loading. We heard from business owners that loading and deliveries was a concern, so having space for trucks and Uber Eats, things of that nature, to utilize some easily accessible areas that would be, kind of time restricted. So maybe in the morning they're loading delivery zones, and then in the evening they open up to parallel parking. So there's sort of that flexibility there. And also with the LaSalle Road design, we've expanded the sidewalks by 5 feet. So we'll get into some scale comparisons from the other options. but really that makes for a more generous walking surface. So having these clear areas between outdoor dining and street tree planting and parked cars really makes for a better pedestrian experience. We're also creating some raised crosswalks, mid-block crossings, so that will be a traffic calming measure, so it'll slow traffic down, provide ADA accessibility across the roadway, so making it easier for folks to traverse the center. And also you saw there that trees and landscaping were a big issue. So right now there's about 36 surviving trees out there, and we would be boosting that number to around 52 trees. And it's not that we're making a denser spacing, it's that we're kind of filling in the gaps of where trees have died, where areas on LaSalle where there's not trees. So using that, utilizing the space as best we can. And also, kind of stormwater is a big issue to us as well. So being able to treat stormwater before it goes into a pipe, getting it back into the ground. So that's all kind of baked into our design thinking. And then getting into some of these scale comparisons between option A, option B, and what the direction is today. So in option A, we had a 10-foot clear walking zone on LaSalle. Option B, it ranged from what it is today, which is roughly 5.5 feet on either side, with some variation here and there. And then with the new direction, we're maintaining about 9'6" clear. You can see some images of what that might look like there. We also have some images in the back that you can see afterwards. And then we did some comparisons to what we're calling programmable space. In this case, it's outdoor dining. So in option A, we were really able to gain a lot of outdoor dining space. Option B is pretty much status quo, what it is against the buildings, keeping the dining space between that the private right-of-way and the public right-of-way line. And then the direction is we have these opportunities in select areas to expand outdoor dining. So by just gaining 5 feet on either side of the curb, it really promotes these opportunities to expand dining. And then on-street parking, and it's been an important issue. So in option A, we had the parallel option. In the pre-pandemic counts, there was 107 parking spaces on LaSalle. In the proposed for option A, there would be 70. So relying on what Liza was saying about parking elsewhere. Option B is we were still wanting to make pedestrian improvements such as traffic calming measures and safer crossings. So that would bring on-street parking to about 88 spaces. And then with the direction, we're right around 91 with loading zones, depending on the time of day. So it might go down to 88 with the time-restricted loading. And then, as I touched on before, I won't go too much deeper, but really being able to improve the urban canopy, having a diversity of street tree plantings that are to be out there, and find these opportunities where we can introduce green infrastructure. So green infrastructure are kind of natural ways to filter stormwater. And then looking at Farmington Avenue, again, very, very similar to what is out there today, except we're proposing kind of this balance between angled parking and some parallel parking. In average, again, we're widening sidewalks by approximately 5 feet, so that kind of starts to balance out the south side of Farmington to the north side of Farmington. If you walk down there, you know that the north side is a little bit more spatially restricted than the south side. And we're increasing parking from the pre-pandemic levels to 78 spaces. And again, we have these traffic calming measures. The mid-block crossings will be raised, so that's going to help slow traffic down. It's going to be, again, flush crossings for people with mobility issues. And we'll get into some of the comparisons too. So again, looking at these spatial comparisons for Farmington Avenue. Currently, which is basically option B, there's kind of a variation between 4.5 feet in the most pinched scenario, let's call it, to around 10 feet where it opens up in some select areas. And for option A, we were originally showing a protected bike lane, but we were still able to expand that walking space by 5 feet there. And in the direction, we're, like I said, expanding it by 5 feet, so average 10-foot clear walking space, so people can walk side by side and walk down the street. And then looking at the outdoor dining comparisons, it's more or less going to be what's out there today. We don't gain that much space by bumping out, so really keeping within that public-private right-of-way. If we were to stick with option B, there would be some pulling back of the outdoor dining in order to keep these clear areas. And then for on-street parking, like I touched on, we're getting about 78 spots, but we're also getting the flexibility of having loading zones in there. And then for the tree comparison, in the proposed plan, we're trying to achieve about 54 native street trees. So again, like I mentioned, it's not packing them in, it's filling in the gaps that we know that are out there today. And just looking at the street tree palette, we're trying to stick with a native tree list. So that's going to encourage everything from birds, fauna, things like that. So providing some habitat as little as it is, but really improving the urban canopy. So there's things like urban heat island effect that we're trying to account for, trying to make the center cool as we can. So through temperature and aesthetics. And then looking at some of the pedestrian amenities in some of the earlier workshops, we had folks vote on items that they liked the most. So looking at providing some more benches and seating. We heard that from the general public about having some places to sit and have an ice cream cone and catch up with friends. Providing some bike racks along the way and enhancing the trash receptacles that are out there. As Liza touched on, pedestrian lighting is the current pedestrian lighting is an issue. It's at the end of its useful lifespan, so this project is a really good chance to upgrade that infrastructure. And then on the bottom row, we're looking at these moments where we can introduce landscaping and green space and have some seasonal interest along the streetscape. And we're proposing a new innovative tree planting method. It's called a soil cell system. So it provides a lot more soil volume than what's out there today and what's the typical street tree planting. So it allows these trees to get really big really quickly. So when concerns of viewing concerns to the retail businesses, allowing those trees to get big in a short amount of time really opens up those view sheds. And then construction phasing, so getting into more granular detail. We see this really happening in multiple phases to have the least impact to businesses. So taking a real granular approach, we're calling it sort of a block-by-block approach. So we're thinking of LaSalle and let's say 2 phases, but within each one of those phases, there would be 3 sub-phases. So we would start on one end of the street and the construction would happen in a linear fashion, and we would be opening, once one section is done, that would be open and then move on to the next section. So it's having the least impact as possible. And also on the next slide, I'll show you kind of how we would, as an example, a subphase could be sequence of construction. Also looking at construction estimates for LaSalle, it's roughly $4.6 million for construction, and Farmington is about 5.8. So. And then, so here we're going to look at the example construction and kind of a sequence of construction so that it'll allow the contractor to work with business owners and keep business open. So the first thing that they would do is set up a staging area. So the idea is to utilize just in front of that subphase the parking area, the current parking areas that would be used as a staging area. The parking area surrounding it would stay open. Two-way traffic would remain. And then there would be a zone 5 feet off the face of the building that would be maintained for pedestrian access. Then the existing pavement would be removed up into that public right-of-way line. Then new utilities would be installed. Light pole footings, things of that nature would be installed. And then the new pavement would be installed up to the temporary green line that you see there, so that we're still maintaining access. That would then be opened up to the general public, and then utilizing after-hours work, the contractor would work to fill out construction up to the face of the building. And then trees and furnishings, things of that nature would be installed. And then once all of those subphases were done, then the milling and repaving of LaSalle would happen.
So not to forget, this project is part of an overall master plan for the center. So as I mentioned before, the analysis and community conversations revealed some gaps in what's happening in the center compared to your community goals. So we're looking at things like, where can we improve crossings, not just in these projects, but also in the future? Where can we provide bicycle parking, both short and long term? Where are there opportunities for pocket parks, places to expand, places to gather, places for public art potentially worked in there as well as gateway elements that sort of tell you, hey, you've arrived, you're somewhere, and it's special. We're also looking at CT transit service and how we can make the bus stops in downtown that much more successful. So overall, this is where we are with the master plan, and I'm going to turn it over to Dwayne to talk a little bit about some of the other complementary initiatives.
Thank you. So in addition to the West Hartford Center Infrastructure Master Plan, we have other projects that are going on that overlap or complement one another. So I just want to go through those quickly. So one of those is our bicycle facility plan. We already have a bicycle facility plan, but we're updating it. So we're looking at ways to get additional bicycle facilities in the town, have better connectivity through the town, and connectivity to other areas outside of West Hartford that have similar features. So bicycle facility plan. Vision Zero, you may have heard about Vision Zero. We recently adopted a Vision Zero plan, which is focusing on traffic safety throughout town. The goal of that is to eliminate fatal and severe injury crashes by 2033. So we already started working on some of the elements that were recommended from our Vision Zero action plan. And we've coordinated with our consultant for the Center Master Plan as it relates to traffic safety through Vision Zero. Third project is a wayfinding signage project. This is something that we're interested in doing throughout town as well, but there's wayfinding signage that could benefit the center. So our consultants have met and are working together to incorporate wayfinding signage in the center as part of our master plan project. On the top right of the screen, you can see examples of some of that signage. And then lastly, the electric vehicle infrastructure plan is another ongoing effort, and obviously we want to incorporate what we can in the center for electrical vehicle infrastructure. So the slide that you have up top is something that we received from our bicycle facility plan update consultant, FHI Studio. You can see their logo on the bottom right. We have shared the plans for the center as far as LaSalle and Farmington Ave's reconstruction with that consultant to get ideas of how to handle some of the bicycle facilities in and around the center. So again, they're looking at the entire town, not just the center, but we wanted to make sure that they provided us input as needed. And there are some challenges with getting bicycle facilities in the center, as you saw from the plan that was selected. So we asked them for options to get people around if they were not comfortable riding on Farmington Ave in particular. So this plan shows some of those opportunities to get around with some of the existing roadways nearby. So next steps, I just wanted to touch upon the schedule for the project. So we've been working on this for quite some time, and the hope is to move forward with the design and take that to a bid phase later on this year. We also are intending to hire a construction manager. It's a pretty complicated construction project in the center of West Hartford. So in order to get our best foot forward, we want to bring in another company that will help assist us with some of the construction issues that we're more than likely going to encounter, especially working with the area business owners and restaurateurs to make sure that any issues can be ironed out in advance as best as possible. It's a very involved construction project in a very busy area, so we want to do the best we can to work around any inconveniences, make sure deliveries and people have access to all the businesses and restaurants as best as we can. So the goal is to get through the design, as I said, get prepared for construction, probably have another public meeting before construction starts to help coordinate. We also want to have the construction manager, get in touch with all the businesses and answer any questions they may have and better prepare for the construction. I'll put this page up at the end in case anybody wants to take a closer look. And then this slide just identifies some ideas to get some thoughts flowing. We have a breakout session with tables in the back where people can ask the staff or the consultant specific questions. There's a few listed there in the bullets regarding the design. Where would you like to see seating areas or planting areas? Which areas need particular attention to pedestrian level lighting? Where would it be most useful to have bicycle racks? Which areas could best support public art? And then lastly, what other special considerations are needed to support the center's character? So if anybody has any questions, we'll just open that up now and see if there's anything specific about the design. If not, or you're not comfortable asking a question, we can go back to the tables back there. There's plenty of plans, including a lot of what you saw up on the screen. Okay, we do have questions. Okay, well, I guess we'll start from the right. Yeah, that's fine. We'll give you a microphone to make it easier to hear the questions.
Just, I guess, just so I understand correctly, the bike lanes that were initially proposed on Farmington are now gone? Is that, so all biking options are eliminated, is that correct?
That is correct in the sense that we won't have a cycle track. So it was originally connected as a cycle track along Farmington Avenue. It was at the level of the sidewalk. And as we continue to do outreach with some of the city residents, you can still ride your bike on Farmington Avenue. That's not a problem, but if somebody's not comfortable doing that, back to a 4-lane road, it's going to be 2 lanes. We're going to have radius of traffic. We also have areas along Farmington Avenue where it will be significantly narrower to make it less comfortable to drive through that area. So some bicyclists may be comfortable riding on Farmington Avenue, but if they're not, and also during construction, we wanted to provide alternate paths around the construction.
Right.
So that's what this drawing is showing.
So I guess that would be my concern, is that I'm not like a big biker, but it seems like currently the car is king in the center, right? It's sort of set up to allow for a lot of parking, allow for people to use their cars, and not really open to using bikes. And it seems like this new, as opposed to version A, this new version continues that idea that the car is really driving, no pun intended, the question, as opposed to allowing both, really 3 things: biking, pedestrians, and driving.
I'll just say in response, we understand the concerns. I'm not going to argue that point, but in trying to balance all the interests from the stakeholders and all of the outreach feedback that we received, this is we're calling it a hybrid because we are trying to incorporate as much elements to improve the center as far as slowing traffic down, still maintaining that good on-street parking, reducing crossing distances for pedestrians, and providing more sidewalk.
Hello. So I had an observation and a question, simple question, kind of along these lines. I'm just really struck by the number of spaces on LaSalle and the number of spaces on Farmington, how 70 and 80 or 70 and 100 is an amazingly small number of spaces, yet we're putting so much stock into, I'm noticing how much stock we put into those small number of spaces. It's hard for me to imagine that the businesses need all of those spaces. If that's what they're living on, is those spaces right in front of the store, that seems very odd. And then an observation from that is with Bike West Hartford, we do a valet parking service for the 2 days of Bike West Hartford, and we put 50 bikes into 2 parking spaces for those 14 hours of Bike West Hartford. And it's just interesting that is a reality, that you can do that, and if we could make people feel safe enough to come downtown on a bicycle instead of in their car, the bikes could all be parked right in the center and using 2 spaces. And then I just had a question. On Farmington, by not having the bike paths, what exactly is being gained by those extra, I'm not sure how many feet, you'd know better than I would? Like, what are we gaining not having bike lanes? What are we gaining? What are we using the space that we're not using for a bike lane? What are we using that for?
Yeah, so it's a balance. It's a balance of the sidewalk expansion, and it's a balance of angled parking. From the business stakeholder groups, we heard adamantly that angled parking was very important to the plan and to their livelihood and survival. So I think that was kind of a driving force in the redesign of that.
If you had bike lanes, you wouldn't have room for angled parking.
Correct.
But you're only increasing parking spots by decreasing, sorry.
So, so from pre-pandemic levels on the design direction, we're increasing to 78 spaces. From current with no outdoor dining, there's 95 spaces out there today.
Hi. Sometimes I feel when I come to the meetings, when you guys see me, you're kind of like, oh God, it's her. Hi. My name is Annie. I'm the store manager for Lux Bond & Green on LaSalle. I've been with them for 10 years. This is Karen Hootenin. She's worked at Lux Bond & Green for 22 years. Both of us are also residents in town, and we both live close enough that we actually can and do walk to work. So we're here for 2 different reasons. I have several questions, and one of my concerns when we have the breakouts and people can ask their questions there is that, are we going to be recording those questions? So the people who couldn't come to the meeting today, by not having group questions, it's just concerning to me that they're not going to be able to see all of the concerns that we had and brought to your attention by having these breakout discussions. So I have many, many questions, and I'm trying to not take up too much time. Firstly, how did the hybrid plan become the choice if the public overwhelmingly didn't choose that as their number 1 choice? And of the people who voted for a second choice, which in our case, we don't believe that our team of folks who voted actually picked a second choice. We were curious to know how many people actually did pick a second choice, because it said 63% of the people who voted for a second option voted for C, but that's 63% of how many people who voted voted. So that was my first question. And I do have others that I believe are questions that we all might have that would benefit the public for us to be asking in the public forum. So I don't know if that's something you would allow me to do, or if that's something you'd prefer I ask in the breakout sessions.
To help with that, so the breakout sessions, we're not recording the questions. But it's easier for some people to have the plan right in front of them and be able to ask the question and get that information. You want to answer the question about
The breakout sessions will also summarize all of our notes, so we'll put that back together, give that back to folks, that'll be online. For option C, you can actually, the second choice, I would have to do math in my head, but it looks like about 600 people gave a second choice, so you're right, it's fewer people. More people gave, this is my only option and that's it, right? So we had fewer people vote for a second choice, but I think I did that math right, about 600.
So it would just show me that most people would have not chose C at all, and they would have gone either for A or B.
Correct. I know who's paying for this.
Should I move along and then?
I may have some of your questions. I would echo the chance to publicly discuss as much as possible, and if people have time for the breakouts later, that's great. A couple of questions and comments. Do expenditures like this, I think it's over $10 million, right, in total? Is that right? Has it ever gone to a referendum in town, or we're spending this much and that's it?
So the funding for the project is the American Rescue Plan Act, and there was a lot of funding that was provided as part of that grant opportunity, and the town council decided what projects should receive the ARPA funding. When this project was originated, it was selected as one to be funded with that ARPA funding by the town council. As the project progressed and the design changed, the cost went up. So not all of the funding is allocated for the project.
So what is that portion? Because the rest will ultimately be taxpayer contributions, or no?
All of it would be funded with the grant.
Okay, I thought you just said some of it won't be.
So some of it was already allocated by that grant. There's additional grant funding available, which when you're doing a better idea of the cost of the closing.
Got it.
The remainder of that will be applied.
Okay, thank you. I, too, don't understand why the bike lanes were eliminated. I am an avid biker in town, and more bike storage versus bike lanes doesn't make sense to me, because I'm not riding there to store my bike because I don't have a bike lane. Just feedback on that. And I am interested to know how the survey that was sent out was distributed. And was it just on your website? Was it a blast out? And you had how many residents in the town of West Hartford, and you had 1,000 participants, something like that?
So it was both. We advertised the poll. It was also
Okay. And then my final question, and I want to monopolize, you mentioned stakeholders. The stakeholders got you to option C. Who are the stakeholders?
So we've had a bunch of public meetings, so anybody that was interested in the project, consider the stakeholder. Then so we have a master plan, right? And then within the master plan, we have these two roads that sections. So stakeholders could be people that live in the neighborhood, could be people that own a business or operate a business along the streets or in the house. And so when we first started out, we were hearing mostly from the general public. We heard a lot from people that were interested in bicycling and walking in the area. We were a little bit visited. But then we
versus a survey vote, which didn't land at C. So it was just kind of loudest voices that happened to show up at a meeting. That's a rhetorical question. You don't need to answer that.
We actually when we were at the last meeting, the stakeholders were not a big
Just to note that that the option that we showed you is not option C. It's a hybrid of B and C, taking into those considerations about keeping some of the angle parking.
But they didn't put any police stations or there's no. I know it's not part of this design. It should be like a designated spot for them. A designated.
As a business owner in town who represents a lot of the businesses in town, I applaud you guys doing the ADA access. I've got a lot of clients who are not coming into town on a bike. They're elderly. They need the parking. Some are in wheelchairs. Some are walking to their dentists, their lawyers, their accountants, etc. So I do applaud you for having those ADA ramps and keeping the parking spaces, especially for a lot of the older people who are, it's tough just to get around, even if they get a spot close to anybody's office or store. I had two questions about, is there going to be any dedicated spots in the center on LaSalle or in Farmington, especially for late night activity, just dedicated for like a police officer, so he's always got a space for their SUV, so it could be there. It's a dedicated space that the police officer doesn't have to double park, which I see after hours. They're having to double park because they don't have their own space to even do their job. And I think if there was at least one on each side of Farmington at the intersection of LaSalle, and then maybe one or two on LaSalle as a dedicated spot for the police officers, or if the police did come, whoever was there, it would almost be like a loading zone type of spot where nobody can go except for a police officer, or a loading zone perhaps. That's a suggestion. And then the only other thought I had was for special occasions when you go to places like Denver, Seattle, or Santa Monica, when you have a small street like LaSalle, usually have decorative lighting that will go over the entire street that makes it look special for a holiday occasion, etc., no matter what denomination, and not just the regular lights, but something that would be special crossing the street, like bulbs, etc., that really light up the entire street and make it a destination for that holiday period.
To answer your first question about the police parking spaces, we don't have dedicated police parking spaces. We have delivery, food pickup, there's obviously bus stops. Lighting goes, we are looking to replace the decorative lighting. We haven't talked about doing something over the road just yet. I think that idea came up a while back on Farmington Ave, and there was just some challenges, on LaSalle, but there was just some challenges with the overhead clearance. Yes.
The restaurants right now are not paying for the stanchions to come in during the summertime or any of that construction. So COVID's been over for a while now, and I know it was done originally to help the restaurants, but now, COVID's been over for how long now? So the town is still paying to have those stanchions come in. So if the town's paying for it, essentially the residents are paying for it. So and that's happening again this year. So when the sidewalks are expanded, are the restaurants benefiting from the extra sidewalk space? And if so, are they going to have to pay any permits or taxes or additional revenues to the town to help subsidize this extra space they're having that they've never had to pay for?
So a couple things in response to that, and we've heard both sides of the argument with regards to the use of the street by the restaurants for extra seating, and recognize the concern and the sacrifice that causes. When it came to considering whether or not to do it again this year, and we were hoping to be in construction this year, but it got pushed out, understanding that, we talked about it, and the decision was to do it again, primarily because the area will be impacted with construction. So we wanted to sort of balance the impact by offering it one more time. The hope with this new design, by narrowing the road or widening the sidewalk, is containing the outdoor dining on the sidewalk, coming forward on the south of Farmington. This is the area the project is planned. As far as how to handle that, or restaurant owners are going to be paying for that, we haven't come to a decision on that, but there's going to be about 5 feet of additional sidewalk space on both sides of the South and Farmington project limits. So there is an opportunity to expand that. The plan is to have the outdoor dining in front of the restaurants, but in front of their buildings, not extending out into the street or even into the sidewalk to the point at which it restricts flow. We've been talking about outdoor dining as well. Additional sidewalk space that we use for emergencies. It's not just for dining space.
If I could add to that, because we're talking about the restaurants. So every morning I walk outside the store and I clean up copious amounts of vomit, beer bottles. Today there were 3 in my planters. This is the first time I've put planters out in years because of Division West, and now that they're no longer there, I thought I was safe, but I am not. So I can't ask my staff to do that because I wouldn't, so I go out there and I clean up vomit, I clean up urine, sometimes human feces. So the fact that I'm cleaning all of this up, and the one time I think I had 6 or 7 vomit spots in front of our store, and one that was on the tree where the planters are. So when you're showing these beautiful pictures of extending the tree planters, I'm very concerned, because when all of that vomit was in where the tree is and the planters, I called the town and said, fine, I'll take care of the ones in front of my store. Please come out and clean the vomit that's all over the trees. And the town said, I'm sorry, you're going to have to take care of it. So my concern with putting in all of this beautiful foliage, which I would love, is that I'm going to just have to clean up more. And what are we doing to make sure that people aren't leaving the restaurants totally plastered and vomiting all over the place, leaving bottles half drunk of liquor in my planters and things like that. I mean, I wish that residents would come out too to support us in what we're up against in the mornings, because we're cleaning it. And I know that the town comes out and they have fellows that come and try and clean things up, but I mean the amount of cigarette butts, garbage, I mean, we find condoms, all kinds of stuff. It's just wild to me.
Yeah, obviously that's very unfortunate that that is happening, and we'll talk to public works and other officials in the town to see what we can do and try and prevent it, and if it happens, what do we do when it does? So I don't have a good answer for you right now, but I can certainly look into it and get you a better answer.
So if you can go back to the poll slide. Yeah, either one, I guess. So I would sort of just challenge how this is being interpreted. If version B is essentially status quo, every other version is something different, and by far the overwhelming majority is that we want something different, right? We don't want the status quo, we want something different. Now, when you break it into 3 other options, obviously you're going to get a different result, but most 60-ish, 65% are saying we want something different.
And I'll just say that, we're really just trying to balance the feedback of what we're getting in the direction to really make it as rich of a plan as we can by expanding the sidewalks, making it a lot safer for pedestrians crossing the street. This gentleman in the back.
Thanks. I just had a question about, I noticed in the overall master plan, there was some, it showed like the CT transit stops. I was wondering if the town is hoping or planning on kind of participating in the new Connecticut Department of Transportation Bus Shelter Enhancement Program to enhance those bus shelters within the center.
so we've been coordinating with CT Transit on a lot of programs, and we will look into this opportunity. There are some really great shelters in the center. I don't know if we're adding shelters per se, but there may be opportunities that we can work out with them.
Yeah, so the enhanced the existing one
I don't know if...
You know, one other thing, going back to what the business owner here said at the jewelry store is, you know, I don't care what hour you walk, you know, whether I'm closing up my office or it's 7 o'clock or 9 o'clock or 11 o'clock, there's a minimal police presence downtown, considering the police department's right downtown. And there's chaos going on, sometimes at 9 o'clock at night, and if everybody in town is witnessing it and saying, why isn't anything being done, where people are smoking up their tires on Farmington Avenue in front of Arugula, or 5 motorcycles having a race down, you know, towards Treva, and everybody's witnessing it, but nothing ever changes. And every business owner I've talked to about the survey said they've asked for an increased police presence, especially since, you know, the police department is right downtown. And I find it odd that we have you know, it's not like the police department is 5 miles out, like some towns, like Middletown, where they have a big traveling area to go. And believe me, I love the police, I love what they do, they've been wonderful downtown, and when I see them, and they've been helpful and everything, but I just don't understand, and I know they go where they're told to go. So I just don't understand why, you know, this business here is experiencing this every day. I deal with it where there was somebody drunk who crashed right and dumped their crashed car after hitting a pole and left it in front of my building until I called the police and had it towed, and there was bottles all over the car and the car was totaled. But that was somebody obviously who was downtown. And it sat there all night until 10 o'clock when I called, and I was seemingly, except for one other neighbor, the only one noticing a completely totaled car that hit a pole in downtown West Hartford. I just don't understand that lack of presence, and every business owner I've talked to, and ones that I represent, all have asked for it, but there never seems to be a change, ever. So I like that addressed.
Thank you. We don't have anybody here from the police to respond.
We do have. Can you address what the current staffing is?
We do, and we have a stronger presence in the center from a police standpoint. You know, we started around 9, 10 o'clock at night, go till about 1 or 2 in the morning, on a Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday. I mean, that's our presence. We are there. We are active. Maybe not on a Monday night at 10 o'clock at night, and I'll talk to the chief about that, having more of a presence on some of those off nights, but from Thursday, Friday to Saturday, we're incurring significant overtime in the center with a presence, ensuring that all of our residents and visitors are safe. So there's not a lack of police presence at, you know, at that hour of any given Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
So how do you explain 20 to 30 kids leaving bars, going through the center, knocking on signs, throwing bottles all over the center, and you're going to have this beautiful plan, which I applaud, and yet it's going to be destroyed within. Do you ever see the 20 to 30 to 40 kids that will leave one bar and then just go through all the side streets?
It's not like it's.
We do, and probably the most significant one is closed. But yeah, we're aware of it, and we're there, and things happen in front of, you know, we talked to Lexbon quite a bit, and, you know, we're doing our best to, and we'll work harder at it, and we work with our restaurants, specifically directly, and
people walking on the beat, walking down the street, you never see two soft runners.
they're out there walking the beat.
No,
Must be different downtown.
one-stop spot. They do not move from that spot. They are only on
Farmington and LaSalle, they get a view of going to LaSalle and going both ways on Farmington.
I have not witnessed that.
We live downtown and we work downtown, so.
And there are.
But I think she's speaking quite loudly. If there was a police presence, there wouldn't be bottles and smash and vomit. Somebody would be walking by and say, keep moving.
significant presence in the center, but it's there, as I said, on Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, it is. Anyone disagreeing with me on that? I mean, I'm there. Yeah.
It's only on Farmers Ave, it's not on the south. And I'm sure if you go to Blue Back, there's no one over there. And I'll be honest, as a woman, there's a lot of dark areas over there that are not well lit. And it's a danger zone over there.
But we don't want that either.
Well, I mean, you shouldn't want it. Your police department's not even a quarter of a mile away from that spot.
No,
It's not well lit.
100 yards from the back. Yeah, they're right there. But they're out on, we're keeping the entire town safe. And with the presence that we do have on Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, that's all bringing in the team for
Actually, it's not on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, so it might have to go to a 7-day-a-week job rather than Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Go there on a Tuesday night, go there on a Wednesday night. And especially in the summertime or when kids come home from college. Nobody went and having a great time, but go there on a Tuesday night, go there on a Wednesday night. I think it's necessary on 7 days a week.
We agree with you. We agree.
Just show up on
And we understand that. We're not happy about that, and we've had meetings with the restaurant owners because they have to help us with that as well. When they're letting some of these kids, as we'll call the, early 20-somethings, head out into the street intoxicated, we could do more within the restaurant to help stop serving people like that and things like that. But yeah, having a presence and doing what we can do to enforce it legally when someone's walking down the street. Do what they do in terms of abominating or leaving their empty beer bottles around. We don't want that.
Do you have a follow-up to that? Okay. I just had a clarifying question about that was going to be my question about the trees and if the soil's bad, what changes. So thank you. I understand that now. In some of the photos or renderings shown, there's like a strip of soil. I'm assuming that is the additional soil. And within that, there are plantings.
The soil is gained below the pavement line. So this new system, we're able to gain on top of native topsoil. Yep. So it's basically a suspended system. Allows the roots to spread out. So trees above about 1,000 cubic feet of soil.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand why take up valuable, what I've heard is valuable sidewalk space with these long planters if it's just aesthetics. It makes no sense to me.
Planter pit size is going to be 4 by 12, so not a huge area.
But needs maintenance.
That's defining the...
Right? Requires maintenance.
And it helps with natural stormwater, low impact.
Okay. All right, so there is an advantage there. But the town will pay for maintenance of all of that, correct? And will there be those large planters, big, like massive pot planters that I see around the center? Or no, those go away?
First question, answer to your question.
Fine details of exactly what's going to be implemented, how much needs to be implemented. There is a stormwater benefit, and it's one of the reasons.
Great.
Also, one of the issues that we have with the trees right now is there's sort of chokes in there.
And so the roots are heaving out of the ground, which is creating a tripping hazard issue that we're trying to contend with. So we want to improve the
tree wells.
And then those big planters go away?
I assume they would go away. We haven't actually talked about it, but
I'm just thinking of the cost to maintain all of this planting throughout the center seems enormous to me. And I've never understood why we've paid to have the town maintain the big planter on the corner of North Main and Farmington. Why? Just for some pretty plants when it costs a lot. So that's my first question. The second is, I still don't understand why we did a survey and then ignored it. Statement of question.
I have one last question.
Where will the snow go? So right now, when it snows, you guys move the snow to the middle of LaSalle, and I can't speak for Farmington because I'm mostly on LaSalle, and you plow it, the next day or within 2 days. So if there's not this space now, where does the snow go? And then will that influence my business because I don't have the ability to have people parking in the parking spots?
So, sorry, I keep looking at you. Better to answer this than I am. Asked earlier today, so the answer before was that we're going to have to change our operation because right now we're using the width of the pavement to store some of that snow and then clean it up after the fact. I don't want to say too much, John, because I may say the wrong thing.
Good evening, John Phillips, Director of Public Works. It's a great question. It takes a lot of creativity. No storm is alike. We take a lot of data points, decision-making points that we need to consider, how we plow the streets. Farmington's plowed differently than LaSalle. LaSalle's plowed differently than Memorial, differently than Isham. Is it before Christmas? Is it after Christmas? What is that window? Is it cold? All those kinds of things that go into that. But essentially, I see it more falling in line with how we treat Blue-Black Square, because Blue-Black Square is very narrow streets. And so we windrow the snow into the parking space, and then we try to recover it that next evening after the crews have a time to recover and come back to work. We're committed to doing that. We've been doing that for 20 years. Prior to Public Works instituting that style of snow removal that you described, we just put it on the sidewalk and left it there. Back in my earlier days, before we instituted it, huge berms, little tunnels cut through to get just to your store. We're certainly in a better place now than we've been there, and we won't go backward. Will it be an inconvenience? Yes. It has to be. It's Mother Nature. Until climate change makes us like Virginia, we're going to have snow. We've been lucky the last couple of years, but is it lucky or is it the norm? I don't know. But that's basically the methodology that we'll go into plowing the streets. There will be an inconvenience, but our job will be to minimize that inconvenience as small as possible.
Okay, any other questions? All right, so seeing none, what we can do now is go to the back of the room. Like I said, there's tables with plans. You can take a closer look, ask other questions if you have them. And I want to put that last slide up.